So today I want to do a little video following on from a number of other videos I've done, which is about planning in Agile to be precise. And I want to run through how to do that, and I want to show you how you would do a planning exercise in Jira and Azure Boards. It's often known as a ceremony, a sprint ceremony if you're running Scrum, but really I just want to talk about the principles of planning and what we do when we're planning, whether it be SAFe, Scrum, or any of the other frameworks that you might want to use. How do you do planning? Now, this is following on from the refinement video that I did. So if you've not done that, about how to refine, also you need to know how to use cards and backlogs, and what a sprint is, what an iteration is, what the difference is between an agile way of working. So go and watch those videos on that website there if you've not watched that, because this might be a little bit over the top for you, a little bit too much information for you. Anyway, my name's Alex, and I'm going to cover planning in Agile, and I'll cover it in Jira and Azure Boards too. So let's jump in. So we start where I finished on one of my backlog videos. So this is a backlog. This is actually the backlog of user stories in Jira. That's why they're purple. But we could just as well be looking at the features, the customer value, and planning those as well, because we've got a backlog. Now, what the difference is between those two is if you're planning user stories, you're really planning them into a sprint, things that can be delivered in a sprint. So that's normally 2 weeks. So it's a small increment you're going to deliver towards the feature, which is the bigger thing. As opposed to if you're planning features, you're really saying, well, these are the features that we're going to be planned in this increment, this planning increment, normally 12 weeks. So you're looking at a SAFe framework there. But the principles are exactly the same. They're both backlogs, and we're going to have them ordered by priority, and we're going to try and say, how much are we going to get done? And that's the important question. I talked about this in a previous video. So no longer, if you're working Agile, this is one of the big changes that many people in the organization don't quite get. We are no longer going to ask, when can this be done, or how far are you going to get? We're going to say, in this next fixed time box, how much of that value are you going to deliver? Now, if it's a sprint, you're talking about how many of those user stories are you going to finish? If you're talking in a PI, it's how many of those features, how much of that value are you going to deliver into market? So that's an important reason. And the reason why we focus on these things is because of these triangles. I may have introduced these before. I've definitely put these on my website before. One of those is working in an agile way, and one of them is working in a waterfall way. And the fundamental difference is what is fixed and what can be managed. If we are working waterfall, we are fixing scope. We know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So what we want to ask is, how much will it cost? What resources will we need? And when will it be done by? That's the waterfall way of working. And that's why we hire a project manager and BAs. BAs will determine your scope, and your project manager will help you manage these things, resource and schedule. Agile does not do that. This is the big difference between Agile and Waterfall. In Waterfall, we say we are going to fix the schedule. We are going to have time boxes. It's going to be every 2 weeks we're going to do something. We're going to deliver something. Every quarter, we're doing quarterly planning, PI planning, and we're going to have fixed teams. If we don't have fixed teams, then you need to manage those teams, and you don't want to. I'll do a video on resource utilization, the myth that it's actually more effective for your organization. But what we're doing is we're fixing this is the one over there. We are fixing our schedule. We are fixing our resources. And so the other thing that we need to manage is scope. How much scope are we going to get done? And that's why we use the backlog, and it's what we are going to plan. You don't need to plan everything at once. It's another agile part. If you plan everything at once, as Churchill would say, you only need one fault in the chain, one link in, and a whole plan has to go in the bin. So don't bother, okay? Plan one iteration at a time, one sprint at a time, and make sure you do it continuously. So this is what we do when we go to planning. First of all, you have to have been in refinement. You need to know what is the outcome that you're seeking. I've put some really simple outcomes on here. It's in the title. We need to know what 100 plus 23 plus 44 is. Now, they're not going to be that simple, of course. We need to deliver something. The next thing we need to do is we need to size those. We don't really want to be saying, well, we're going to do 2 things. We want to say, how big is that? Is it a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4? There's 2 different ways of doing it. Story points, which is usually uses the Fibonacci system. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. So that's one way. The other way is just say big, small, medium, large t-shirt sizing. The good thing about the Fibonacci system, you can add it up. So you don't end up having to say we can do 2 medium, 1 small, or 4 small, 1 medium. You're just not doing that. You're saying we can do this sum of story points. Anyway, the important thing is, I'll do a video on estimation. In your planning, you need to do the following things. First of all, you need to prioritize. You're going to work from the top down. So that's absolutely, before you even start planning, make sure your refinement session finished with prioritization. Make sure you start your planning with prioritization. Then size them. And size and complexity goes together. So how much of that can we do? Well, this one, it's the same size, it's exactly the same work, except it's at times. It's like this, slightly more complicated. It's going to be more complex than the one above, so we're going to say it's bigger. Now, if we want to attribute a label to this, that's small, that's medium. Or we can say that's a 1, that's a 3. It's 3 times the size of that one. It's going to take 3 times more complex. Okay, that's how you do your sizing. I'll do more videos about this, but this is a planning activity. I'm going to show you how you do it rather than the planning, rather than how you do the estimation. Once you've done that, you're going to have a historic thing. It's called velocity. Of historically, we deliver 2 small things, 1 medium. Historically, we deliver 1 plus 3 plus 1, 5 story points. So you draw a line and you go, that's our prediction, our forecast for the next iteration, we will get that done. Now you can do this next thing in order. You can do this first or you can do the sizing, it's up to you. The last thing about planning is you are then going to say, okay, who's going to do what? Now you might have a discussion at the beginning of planning about your capacity, by the way. So you're going to base it on the velocity, but you might go, look, who's available next sprint? And if you've got half your capacity from Melbourne Cup coming up here in Australia, you will drop that velocity down. So you'll say, well, we normally do 5, but we're all losing a day. So let's take it down to 4. Let's be conservative. Now, I've left this one at the bottom here. Make sure you've got the last one as well sized, because if one of these gets blocked, you don't want to have to do another meeting. You can say, well, let's just pick the next thing off the backlog. So that's what you'll do. Okay, now that's a planning exercise. When you're doing planning, you make sure your priorities are correct. You make sure you understand the size of your work. Your refinement should have got down what the outcome is. So make sure you've got the outcome, size, priority, make sure it's assigned, and then commit to how much are you going to get done. That's a planning exercise. Now I'm going to show you in the tools. So the first tool I'll show you is in Jira. Here is that backlog down here. This is what we're going to do. We're going to click on one. So I'll just do that again. We'll click on one. We will see it will come up over here, and we will go to here, and we will size. First thing we're going to do. We could have reordered, by the way. I've jumped over that, but we could have reordered here. Make sure we're working on the top priority. We size. We click into there, and we type in the number, and then we go, thank you very much. That's now done. We got 5. Now what happens then? It sticks a 5 there. Awesome. Then what we do is we go, well, in this team, let's say our velocity, we know it's 10. Well, we can commit that to the sprint. It's the top priority. It's 5. We know we'll get it done. So you drag it up and you drag it up here and you put it into the sprint. And this now tells us we have 5 things in the sprint. Are you ready to start the sprint? Well, if that's the only thing going in, you are ready and you hit start. Otherwise, you just repeat that again. You go to the next one and you put the story points on. By the way, the story point exercise, I will do a video on estimation. You do with the team. You make sure the team's involved there. But eventually, you're going to start the sprint. So you say, that's the plan. We're going to start the sprint. Oh, I beg your pardon. We go and click on it and we put the who's going to be assigned to before we start the sprint. I forgot that. Make sure we go and click on, same again, we click on the item, we put who's it's assigned to, we assign it to someone, and then their little avatar comes up here as well. So AC, that's costing. And then once you've got all of them assigned, they're in the priority order, they're sized, then we hit start sprint, and each time in Jira you have to say when the sprint's running to. Now that will be done globally when we do it in Azure Boards in a second. And then we start the sprint. And it automatically takes you to, you are now in the sprint, guys. Here is the board you want to work from. You have committed 1 story to the sprint. Here it is. Your goal this sprint is to get that from there to there. That's it. And that's how you do it in Jira. Now in Azure Boards, it's a different interface, same principles. Now the user stories in there are blue. They're not green, but we've got a list of user stories. Again, you can drag them up and down. So we've got the priorities. But what we want to focus on is number 1 priority. So I've just clicked on title, number 1 priority. There's the effort field. We'll fill that in. We'll say 5, and then we'll save and close. And that then says that one's got 5. We'll then drag and drop that over here and to sprint 1. Thank you very much. It's now committed to sprint 1. What we can then do is we can go assign to myself, again, same activity, and it's now assigned to sprint 1. Now the difference in here, this is automated in here, is the sprint's already started if you've already started that day. This is a preset schedule. It's a cadence that's already aligned. So, and in its scale, that's important because we want aligned cadence. So that's the same thing done. The difference here, it doesn't automatically take you to the board. You will have to now come up here and click View as Board, and that will take you to the board view. We have this to get done, and we can put the tasks in there. There are other views that look just like Jira, and you can move it across. But essentially, we finish on a board with That's the stuff. We don't want to look at all the rest of the backlog. We want to focus on the sprint. Our plan is to get that done. What we really want to do is stick to that plan for 2 weeks. If it was done at scale, we would do the same thing, practically the same thing in the tools as well, with the features that we're going to deliver at scale. So that's planning. We do a lot of planning in Agile, believe it or not. What we really do is we plan in as close to the context and the content as possible. So we don't do a big plan up here and then try and run it through. We say plan, execute. And that's really the difference. And that's how you do it in the tools. So if you're a Scrum Master, you definitely need to know how to do that. But if you're a team member, you really need to do it as well. Because your Scrum Master might be on leave and you still want to be able to run. I hope you enjoyed that. Check out those other videos. Thanks for your time, guys.